continue with the class that is hydrocephalus. So where we have seen like what is hydrocephalus, what are the classification of hydrocephalus, causes of hydrocephalus and pathophysiology of hydrocephalus. So now we'll continue with the symptoms. So normally the symptoms usually seen that they'll be having big head, okay, they'll be having big head, and this big head will be present up to 3 years, okay, they'll be having big head, that is the excessive head growth, okay, they'll be having excessive head growth. So that usually will be present up to 3 years. And then delayed closure of the fontanelle, that is anterior fontanelle. So the closure of this anterior fontanelle, it usually takes about 18 months, and in this usually due to this hydrocephalus, what happened, they will not be able to there will be delay in closure, okay, there will be delay in closure. So normally there will be delay in the closure of anterior fontanelle. Next, the fontanelle will be elevated, okay, the fontanelle will be elevated above the surface of the skull, okay, the fontanelle will be elevated above the surface of the skull. So that is, they will be having excessive head growth. Anterior fontanelle will be like delay closing in the anterior fontanelle, and the fontanelle will be elevated above the skull surface, okay, above the surface of the skull. And also they will be having signs of increased intracranial pressure, okay, they will be having signs of increased intracranial pressure such as vomiting, restlessness, and bulging fontanelle, irritability, and also they will be having papilloedema, lethargic, coma and stupor, okay, coma and stupor. So that is usually what happens, they will be having signs of increased intracranial pressure, okay, they will be having signs of increased intracranial pressure. So that is usually includes such as vomiting, restlessness, bulging fontanella, papilloedema, coma and stupor. So that is usually there. And muscle tone, alteration in the muscle tone, okay, there will be alteration in the muscle tone of the extremities, okay, they will be having alteration in the alteration of the muscle tone of the extremities, okay, alteration in the alteration of the muscle tone of the extremities. So these are the symptoms that is usually commonly seen: increased head growth, excessive head growth, anterior delay in the closure of anterior fontanelle, and then fontanelle are elevated above the surface of the skull. Then they will be having signs of increased intracranial pressure, and also they will be having muscle tone will be disturbed, okay, muscle tone will be altered, okay, so that is of the extremities. So the other signs, it might be they will be having headache, or usually they will be having other symptoms that usually will be having is that, so they will be having other symptoms, okay, they will be having other symptoms such as forehead becomes prominent, okay, the forehead becomes prominent, okay, so that is usually what happens, the forehead usually becomes prominent, scalp appears shiny, okay, the scalp usually appears shiny. So these are the physical signs, okay, these are usually the physical signs where you can see that the forehead becomes prominent, scalp usually becomes shiny, okay, the scalp usually becomes shiny, and the eyebrows and the eyelids will be drawn upward, okay, the eyelids and the eyebrows will be drawn upward, and also usually seen that the eyelids and the eyebrows will be drawn upward, okay, usually will be drawn upward. So that is usually there. So and also the infant will be having difficulty to hold head, okay, the infant will be having difficulty to hold head. So that is usually the late physical signs that is usually seen. So the physical signs that usually seen that the forehead becomes prominent, shiny, scalp will become shiny, eyebrows and the eyelids will move upward. The infant will be facing difficulty to hold the head, okay, the infant will be facing difficulty to hold the head. So next is diagnostic evaluation. So diagnostic evaluation, mainly we go with CT scan, MRI scan, as well as serial measurement of head circumference should be done, okay, serial measurement of head circumference should be done. Lumbar puncture test is done mainly to check out the CSF, whether it has been absorbed properly or not, or the CSF, it is excess amount of CSF it is present or not. So all this thing it is usually done in case of diagnostic evaluation. So diagnostic evaluation, mainly we go with serial measurement of head circumference, CT scan, MRI scan, as well as lumbar puncture test. So that is usually done. So next is management. So management, it is usually treated mainly with surgical procedures, okay, management is mainly treated with surgical procedure. That is where we check if there is tumor in the head, then the tumor will be removed, or it go with intracranial shunts will be placed, okay, intracranial shunts will be placed in case of non-communicating hydrocephalus, okay, in case of non-communicating hydrocephalus, they go with placing intracranial shunts, okay, they go with placing intracranial shunts so that the direct fluid is absorbed through the segment of the ventricular system to the subarachnoid space, and that is usually what happens, intracranial shunt will be placed where the fluid will be absorbed directly, okay, where the fluid will be absorbed directly. So that is usually there. And also they go with extracranial shunt also will be placed, okay, extracranial shunt will also be placed. So this is mainly to divert the fluid, okay, this is mainly to divert the fluid from ventricular compartment to the extracellular compartment. Okay, from the ventricular compartment to the extracranial compartment. Okay, from ventricular compartment to the extracranial compartment. So that is usually about this management of this hydrocephalus. Hydrocephalus, it is mainly managed through surgical procedures. So what are the management that we go with mainly, like if at all if tumor are present, then we have to surgically remove the tumor, and in case of other surgery that we process, that intracranial shunt and extracranial shunt is done. Intracranial shunt is done in case of non-communicating hydrocephalus, where the fluid will be direct fluid will be passed. Okay, direct fluid will be passed, or the fluid will be diverted from the obstruction. Mainly in the non-communicating hydrocephalus, obstruction is there, no? So therefore we will divert the fluid from the obstructed area. Okay, we will divert the fluid from the obstructed area. So next is extracranial fluid. It is done mainly here also, it is diverted from the ventricular system to the extracranial compartment. Okay, ventricular system to the extracranial compartment. So that is usually about this management of hydrocephalus, where we go with removal of the tumor if it is present, and in case of non-communicating hydrocephalus, we go with using intracranial shunt, where the fluid will be diverted from the obstruction. And next, extracranial shunt, here also the fluid is diverted from the ventricular system to the extracranial compartments. So that is usually about this management of hydrocephalus, and this is about this hydrocephalus. So hydrocephalus, so in this we have studied about this hydrocephalus. So the next topic that we go with it is encephalitis. As you all have studied about encephalitis in your medical surgical nursing. So encephalitis is acute inflammation of the brain. Okay, encephalitis, it is the acute inflammation of the brain, and the majority cause of this encephalitis, it might be due to immune system disturbances or viral infection. Okay, the exact cause, like most of the children who are affected by encephalitis are mainly caused by viral infection or immune system disturbances. Okay, immune system disturbances. When there is immune system disturbances, it mistakenly attacks the tissues of the brain. Okay, it mistakenly attacks the tissues of the brain. So encephalitis, it is an acute inflammation of the brain. Okay, encephalitis, it is the acute inflammation of the brain. So majority of the causes, it is mainly due to viral infection or immune system disturbances. Okay, majority of the causes, it is mainly due to viral infection and immune system disturbances. So next, that is usually done. Next is causes. So causes mainly it includes like viral infection. So viral infection, it might be caused due to some viruses such as herpes simplex virus, varicella zoster virus, measles, mumps and rubella virus, as well as that is usually seen. So it is mainly caused due to viral infection. So that is the viruses which usually causes is encephalitis. It is herpes simplex virus, varicella zoster virus, mumps, measles and rubella virus. So if the encephalitis, if it is caused by virus, it is called as viral encephalitis. If the encephalitis, it is caused by virus, it is usually called as viral encephalitis, and the other causes might be non-viral agents. If the other causes can be non-viral agents such as protozoa, fungi, malaria or bacteria. Okay, the other causes can be non-viral agents. Mainly it includes protozoa, fungi, bacteria and malaria. And also this is also caused in the definition of April. It is also caused due to immune system problems. It is also caused due to immune system problems. So that is usually done. And if encephalitis can also occur due to previous infection to the brain. Okay, any previous infection, it is usually called as post-infectious encephalitis. Okay, the encephalitis, if it is occurred due to any previous infection, that is usually called as post-infectious encephalitis. This is usually caused due to tumor or any. It is mainly caused due to tumor. Okay, it is mainly caused due to tumor. So that is usually about this post-infectious encephalitis. The other causes, it can be due to any allergy or due to any post-vaccination, like vaccination. I have told you in the medical surgical nursing also. It might be due to any vaccination, okay, a reaction to any vaccination. Okay, it can occur due to any reaction to the vaccination, or it can be due to any metabolic disorders. Okay, it can be due to any metabolic disorders like diabetes. So that is usually about this causes of encephalitis. Okay, that is usually about this causes of encephalitis. So what are the causes of encephalitis? So mainly it includes viral causes. If it is viral causes, it is caused by herpes simplex virus, varicella zoster virus, mumps, measles and rubella virus. And if the encephalitis, if it is caused due to viral viruses, then it is called as viral encephalitis. And the other non-viral agent that causes encephalitis, it is protozoa, bacteria, malaria as well as fungi. And it is also caused due to any infection, previous infection. So that is usually causes post-infectious encephalitis. So example, it includes if the person was suffering from any tumor. The other causes, it can be due to metabolic disorders such as diabetes, or in case of any toxins, okay, in case of any toxins like consumption of lead and carbon monoxide, and also it might be due to post-vaccination, after due to the reaction due to the any vaccination. So these are usually the causes of encephalitis. So what is encephalitis? Encephalitis is nothing but inflammation of the brain that is mainly caused, majority of the cause it is due to viral infection or immune disorders. So that is usually about this thing. So causes we have seen viral, non-viral agents, protozoa, fungi, bacteria and malaria. Next is due to immune disorders, due to post-infection disorders, and also due to other causes. It can be due to hypoxia or due to vaccination, reaction due to vaccination, or due to metabolic disorders, or in case of toxins, that is consumption of carbon monoxide or lead. So next is symptoms. So symptoms mainly it includes, like the child will be having fever, drowsiness as well as sleep. Okay, the main symptoms that they are having is fever, drowsy and sleepy. Okay, the baby will be continuously sleeping. Okay, the child will be continuously sleeping. Along with that, the other symptoms that you can see, the baby's child behavior will be changed. Okay, the baby's behavior will be changed. They might be over friendly, or they might be rudely. They'll behave rudely to others. Okay, they'll behave over friendly to the people, or they might behave rudely to the individual. So that is usually there. And the other symptoms, it can be like headache will be there, seizures can happen, and also they'll be having loss of ability to loss of ability to move some of the parts of the body. Okay, loss of ability to move some of the parts of the body. So that is usually there. So that is usually seen in case of symptoms of encephalitis. So symptoms of encephalitis mainly includes fever, drowsy and sleepiness, and the child usually behavior also changes, like they might be over friendly or they might be behaving rudely, and they might have like other symptoms, headache, seizures and loss of ability to move some parts of the body. So these are usually the symptoms of encephalitis. So next is diagnostic test. So diagnostic test that we go with, it is a complete history, physical examination should be done, CT scan, MRI scan of the brain should be done. Then we have to go with CSF study. Okay, we have to go with CSF study to check whether there is infection of the CSF. Blood examination is done to check out the metabolite products as well as any electrolytes. Urine examination should be done. So that is usually about the diagnostic test that we go in case of encephalitis. History collection and physical examination. Then CT scan and MRI scan will be done. Blood examination is usually done for checking out the metabolites as well as the sugar level. So that is usually the diagnostic test that we go in case of encephalitis. So next is management. So in case of management, so mainly we have to go with giving antipyretics. Okay, mainly we go with giving antipyretics. Antipyretics, it is usually given to reduce fever. Antiviral drugs should be given. Okay, antiviral drugs should be given because I have told you that it is mainly caused by viruses. So therefore antiviral drugs should be given. That is usually given. Then we go with giving them steroid therapy. Steroid therapy is given to reduce the inflammation, and this steroid it is usually given through IV. That is dexamethasone. Okay, dexamethasone is given. That is given through IV. Then we go with anticonvulsant agents. If seizures are present, we go with giving them anticonvulsant agents to control these convulsions. And in case if cerebral edema is there, okay, if cerebral edema is given, then we have to go with giving them glycerol. Okay, then like cerebral edema, if it is present, we go with administering mannitol or glycerol. Okay, mannitol or glycerol. Fluid and electrolyte balance should be maintained. Okay, fluid and electrolyte balance should be maintained. And then that is usually done. Like antiviral therapy, I have told you, acyclovir is given. Okay, acyclovir about 30 mg per kg per day should be given. Okay, acyclovir should be given about 30 mg per day per kg should be given to the children. So that is usually done. And if there is malaria, okay, cerebral malaria, then we go with treating them anti-malarial drugs. We go with treating them with anti-malarial drugs. So that is usually about this thing. Then if it is like immune disorders, like immune system disorders, then we go with giving them human immunoglobulin. Okay, we go with administering human immunoglobulin, that is 200 to 500 mg per kg is administered. Okay, 200 to 500 mg per kg it is usually administered. This is the management of encephalitis. What are the management of encephalitis? So mainly we go with like antipyretics will be used. Okay, so antipyretics it is usually to reduce the fever. Antipyretics is used. Antiviral drugs such as acyclovir is used about 30 mg per kg per day. It is usually given. Like if it is cerebral edema, is that mannitol or glycerol is done. Fluid and electrolyte balance should be maintained. Next we go with anticonvulsant drugs is given, like to reduce convulsions. Steroid therapy is given, like dexamethasone is given to reduce the inflammation. Then we go with like cerebral malaria if it is present, then we go with treating them with anti-malarial drugs. And immunoglobulin is given to the kids like about 200 to 500 mg per kg. It is usually given to reduce the mortality rate. So this is about this management of encephalitis. So this is about this encephalitis. So what is encephalitis? Encephalitis is nothing but inflammation of the brain that is mainly caused due to viral or immune disorders. So the next topic that usually we will see about it is brain tumor. So what is brain tumor? A brain tumor, it is a collection of mass of abnormal cells in the brain. Okay, so brain tumor, it is nothing but collection of abnormal cells in the brain. Okay, it is a collection of abnormal cells in the brain. So what is brain tumor? Brain tumor, it is nothing but collection of abnormal cells in the brain. Skull, which usually that is usually seen. So it is mainly brain tumor. It is usually the abnormal collection of the it is usually the collection of the abnormal cells in the brain. Okay, collection of abnormal cells in the brain and skull. So brain tumor can be malignant or non-malignant. Okay, the brain tumor can be malignant or benign. Okay, the brain tumor can be malignant or benign. So when there is usually there. So that is usually about this brain tumor. So brain tumor, it is usually a collection of abnormal cells in the brain, and this brain tumor can be benign or malignant. Okay, it can be benign or malignant. So this brain tumor, it is usually categorized into two, that is primary brain tumor and secondary brain tumor. Okay, so this brain tumor, it is categorized into two, that is primary brain tumor and secondary brain tumor. So in case of primary brain tumor, so that is usually it originates in the brain. Okay, it usually originates in the brain, and this primary brain tumor, it is benign. Okay, the primary brain tumor, it is benign. And the secondary brain tumor, it is also called as metastatic brain tumor, because it occurs where in the secondary brain tumor it spreads to the other cells. Okay, it spreads to the other cells, such as other cells as well as the other parts like lung, breast, as well as blood and lymph. Okay, so it usually spreads to the other cells of the parts, that is lung, breast, blood and lymph. So this brain tumor, it is nothing but a cell collection of abnormal cells in the brain. It is mainly, it can be benign or malignant. So this is usually categorized into two, that is primary brain tumor and secondary brain tumor. Primary brain tumor, it is usually occurs in the brain, and this is usually benign. And secondary brain tumor, it is malignant because it spreads to the other parts of the body, such as lung, breast, blood and lymph. So that is usually there. So next is usually about the risk factors of this brain tumor. So what are the risk factors of this brain tumor? So risk factors mainly includes family history. The risk factors mainly it includes its family history, like about 5 to 10% of the cancer are mainly genetically inherited. Okay, but 5 to 10% of the brain tumor, it is genetically inherited. So that is family history. Next, it is age. So it is usually risk for developing this brain tumor increases with age. Okay, risk for developing this brain tumor increases with age. Okay, it usually increases with age. So that is usually there. Next, usually that is usually there. And also next is chemical exposure. Okay, so chemical exposure. So that is usually due to there is high chances of developing this brain cancer if they expose to certain chemicals. Okay, certain chemicals. So that is usually there. And then exposure to radiation, such as exposure to radiation, there is chances that they may develop brain cancer. That is usually there. So that is usually about the risk factors of developing brain cancer, brain tumor. That is family history, age, exposure to chemicals, exposure to radiation, and also in few cases like American Brain Tumor Association. Okay, American Brain Tumor Association have told that if the child has history of chicken pox, like if the child had a history of chicken pox, they have decreased risk of developing brain tumor. Okay, if the child has risk, if the child has history of history of chicken pox, then they'll be having decreased risk of developing brain tumor. And this was usually told by American Brain Tumor Association. So these are usually about the risk factors of brain tumor. So next is symptoms. So what are the symptoms that they develop? Headache will be there, increased and also the headache will be there, and the headache pain will increase more when the baby is walking, especially after waking up. Okay, especially after waking up. So headache will be there, and the pain will be increasing especially after waking up and while walking, and also when they cough. Okay, the pain usually increases when they cough. So that time also the head pain will be severe. Blurred vision or double vision, headache, blurred vision or double vision, confusion will be there, and also they will be having behavioral changes also will be there. Okay, behavioral changes will also be there. speech disturbances will be there, behavioral changes will be there, speech disturbances will be there, memory loss will be present. Okay, memory loss will be present. So that is usually there. And also they will be having change in the ability to hear, smell and taste. Okay, they will be having changes in the ability to hear, taste and smell. So that is usually there. And also muscle weakness in the face, arm and leg. Okay, they will be having muscle weakness in the face, arm and leg. Okay, so they will be having muscle weakness in the face, arm and leg. So that is usually there. So that is mainly about the symptoms that is usually seen. Headache will be severe early morning when they wake up, walking, sleeping and also when they cough. Then blurred vision and double vision will be there. Ataxia will be present, confusion will be there, speech disturbances will be there, behavioral changes occurs. Next they will be having changes in the ear to ear, taste and smell, and also they will be having muscle weakness Okay, that is usually difficulty in swallowing. Okay, they will be having difficulty in swallowing. These are usually the symptoms that is usually seen in case of brain tumor. So what are the diagnostic tests we go? Biopsy, history collection, whether any of the family members were suffering from this brain tumor, X-ray, CT scan, MRI scan, angiography is done. So that is usually about this diagnostic test that we go. Diagnostic test we go with history collection, physical examination, MRI, CT scan, X-ray, biopsy it is usually done. So next is management. So management mainly depends upon the type, management mainly depends upon the brain tumor. Okay, management mainly depends upon the brain tumor, that is type of tumor, size of tumor, location of the tumor and general health of the child as well as the extent that spread of tumor. So that is mainly the management mainly depends upon the brain tumor, that is type of brain tumor, size of brain tumor, spread of this brain tumor and the general health of the child and the location of the tumor. So that is usually there. And next is usually, so management, so mainly we go with radiation therapy and chemotherapy. Okay, we go with radiation therapy and chemotherapy, that is usually recommended. And symptomatic treatment is also given, like supportive care is usually given, like in case of headache, pain and all, analgesics will be given. So all these things usually will be given, and taste, and if they are having odd taste then we go with giving them food which they like with proper taste, whatever they feel, so that has to be usually given. And also they go with physical therapy, occupational therapy and speech therapy, because there is speech disturbances, behavioral changes is there, we go with physical therapy, occupational therapy and speech therapy is usually given. And in case if it is not there, we go with surgical management, where we go with the removal of the tumor, okay, where incision will be made in the craniotomy, like craniotomy will be done, will be the cranium will, like there will be incision making in the cranium and removing the tumor from the brain. So all this is usually done in managing brain tumor. So what is that? Management of this brain tumor mainly depends upon the brain tumor, that is location of the brain tumor, type of brain tumor, size, spread of brain tumor and the general health of the baby. So we start with children. Maybe we start with radiation therapy and chemotherapy. Then symptomatic care as well, supportive care is usually given. Physical therapy, occupational therapy and speech therapy is usually done. Then other than that, we go with surgical management, like where we will be making an incision in the cranium and removing the tumor from the brain. So that is usually about this management of brain tumor. So this is about this brain tumor. Brain tumor, it is nothing but collection of abnormal cells in the brain. Okay, collection of abnormal cells in the brain. It can be benign or malignant. Okay, it can be benign or malignant. So this is about this brain tumor.